Okay, everybody, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Sherry Moore. I'm part of the business development team here at Executive Education, which is also part of SMU Cox School of Business. So today we are going to feature our Master Negotiation class, and I'm going to introduce Robin Pinkley in a minute. But before we get started, let me just give you a quick overview of what we're going to cover today in our sessions during this hour. So I wanted to spend a little bit to talk about SMU and SMU Cox. And in executive education, we have four main themes of programs that we offer. We offer management and leadership programs. We offer multi-dimensional diversity programs. We offer finance programs, and we offer strategy programs. So today we're going to talk about one of our strategy programs that's led by Dr. Robin Pinkley, which is Master Negotiation. And then as we move into her session and talk a little bit more about her topic, then we will come back and talk about the registration process to register for the program. At the end of the session, we're going to have some key contacts and how to reach out to us if you have additional questions. And then we'll also have a Q&A session. So while we're on that topic, we would love to have your questions as we go along. If you can find the Q&A button, that is how you can send us questions, and then we will either take those during her session discussion, or we will hold those to the end. So we definitely welcome questions. It makes for a much better interactive session. So let's move into the webinar. So I just wanted to talk first about SMU Cox. We are now celebrating our 100th year of business education. That was on February 20th of 2020. SMU is an integral part of the business community. We have wonderful, proven instructors, true and tested content. We have a commitment to leadership development and to performance. And we foster an area of collaborative working methods with companies and individuals to ensure success. Our goal is really to develop business leaders, and we incorporate principles and techniques of adult learning that include reflection, active participation, sharing of experiences, a variety of learning methods. Our instructors have credibility and humility and respect. And this is a safe learning environment to test new ideas. When we talk to people about why they chose SMU Cox Executive Education for programs, this is what we hear back, that we have an expert, engaging faculty who are leaders in their field. We offer relevant content that's based on the latest research. We have innovative tools that you can put to work today. And we have a collaborative and networking with diverse colleagues. And as I mentioned earlier, we really encourage you to test new ideas, and this is a safe space to challenge those. So as I mentioned, strategy is one of our thematics, and Master Negotiation is a program we're going to talk about today, but I just wanted to highlight the other two programs in the strategy theme. And we're going to be offering on October 1st, Leading Change in Volatile Times. This is a one-day session. And then October 6th through 8th is a program we're going to talk about today, Master Negotiation. And then we're also offering a new program called Building the Intelligent Enterprise. And this is a two-day program in November that is led by Hetty Tabor, who is the head of our Master of Business Analytics program. So these are the main programs in our strategy thematic that we'll cover. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Robin Pinkley. Dr. Pinkley is the Janet and Craig Duchossois Endowed Professor of Management and Organizations at the Edwin L. Cox School of Business. And she previously served as chairman of the Organizational Behavior Department and is director of the American Airlines Center for Labor Relations and Conflict Resolution. She previously served as a visiting professor of organizational behavior at the Kellogg Graduate School of Management at Northwestern University. And Dr. Pinkley received her Ph.D. in social psychology from the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. In addition to numerous corporate consulting projects and speaking engagements, Dr. Pinkley is the co-author, along with Greg Northcraft, of Getting Paid What You're Worth, the Expert Negotiator's Guide to Salary and Compensation. And we want to hear more about that today, Robin. She is also the author and co-author of articles on negotiation and managerial conflict resolution, and she has appeared in multiple international publications. Dr. Pinkley is the creator of the gain-gain approach to profitable negotiation, and her research focuses on the sources and the consequences of negotiator power, the use of strategic anchors for enhancing opponent perceptions of negotiated value, and the strategic application of the value context theory. And this research has earned Dr. Pinkley the Edwin L. Cox 1994 Outstanding Researcher Award and many more accolades since then. She's also the recipient of SMU's Golden Mustang Award for Innovation Teaching and the Carl Sewell Distinguished Service to the Community Award. So at this point, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Pinkley, and she's going to take over the slides and tell you a little bit more about the program.
Thank you, Sherry. I really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone for attending this. I know that this is the middle of your day and you're probably trying to have lunch, dealing with children at home while you're working. We know how complex this is. I mean, this is, let's face it, our new normal. I'm trying to hit the slides, but let's see if they're going to work. Last time we had a little trouble getting it to switch over, so we'll have to see if we can get that done. Yeah, it's not moving.
Okay, I'll move you
forward.
forward.
All right, guys, this is technology, and I'm sure you're used to doing, there we go. Okay, so thank you, Sherry, for the introduction. I really, really appreciate it. And now I will just disappoint you as you get to know me, but that's fine. I'm used to that. Let me tell you how I'm going to approach this topic today in this webinar. Sherry asked me to think about some of the primary components of this program that differentiates from others. And I will tell you, my guess is that many of you have been through negotiation programs before. I certainly hope that you have. But my approach is really quite distinct and is gaining huge traction. And let me tell you why it's distinct. It's distinct because, as Sherry told you, I have worked for hundreds of Fortune 50 to startup companies, hundreds of government organizations in 10 countries. And having had that great privilege, I have had the opportunity to work from everyone from master negotiators to novice negotiators. And by watching what they do, by helping them deal with their opportunities and also try to overcome their challenges, it has really refined my own thinking about negotiation. And because I'm a scholar, what I learned from you, I then take back to the laboratory and do research on it to see whether or not we see patterns and consistencies and understand the consequences and causes. And then what I learned from that, which you just influenced my research, I take back to my customers and apply it to my customers to help them better achieve their successes and deal with their challenges. So that's a circular approach that I use, and it has led me to create a different, unique approach to negotiation that is unlike any that any of my renowned and highly respected colleagues are using. So one of the things you're going to have to do is determine whether this fits for you, okay? Because this is all about you. This is all about you figuring out who it is you are, how it is you view the world, what is the way in which you tend to interact with others, what aspects of what you're doing is really leading to your success, and what habits you have you may not even be aware of that are also impacting what you do, what you say, how you view the world, and how can we get into the best toolbox in the world, which is your head, and help you to clean it up and understand more effectively what you believe, why you believe it, how you apply what you believe. And what we'll do is take the best parts of that and refine them and help others to learn from them. We'll take the parts that are just taking up your time and are ineffective, and we'll get rid of those. And we'll take the parts that are actually counterproductive and reducing your success in this world, and we will replace it with new, novel, state-of-the-art effective strategies. One of the things I always say is that everything I talk about in negotiation is not just applicable to your professional life, although it's extremely applicable. And I would be upset and view myself as a failure if the day after you were in that program, you did not apply some of those things and see change. And 10 years after the program, you weren't applying some of those things and seeing change. Although in honesty, 10 years from now, I'll be teaching newer things, okay? I would feel like a failure if you weren't able to do that. But I'll tell you what else. This is such a consistent philosophy of interpersonal exchange that everything you learn should be equally applicable to your personal life, to your relationships with significant others, to relationship with family members, to relationships with those 2-year-old children that are right now behind you, trying to interact and get your attention while you're watching this webinar. Okay, teenagers are a little more difficult for me to deal with, but we can even deal with those. So this is about refining the way you see, interact with, and act in this world. That's what this program is about. Okay, Sherry's asked me to point out and talk about some of the primary aspects of this program. And let me tell you, it's a 3-day program. It is a head-spinning program in all reality. People come, they love it. They always ask us for more, but they're exhausted by the time they leave. And because guess what? We're changing your view of the world, and then we're helping you to apply it. That takes a lot. So we appreciate your interest in coming to the 3-day program. So I'm not going to cover everything we're going to be talking about because we're going to be doing a lot. But I am going to talk about some of the pivotal components of this that I think are particularly important. And so let me start. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to read the question we decided was relevant. I'm going to read exactly the answer we provided, and then I'm going to elaborate on it. Okay, so that's how we're going to approach. And as you have Q&A questions during, feel free to put them in. I will probably wait until the end of this to answer those questions. But please, as things occur to you, because they're going to go away, go ahead and put them in the Q&A session if you'd like. Okay, so, what distinguishes this program from all others? Well, I've created this thing I call the gain-gain approach to profitable negotiation. And by that, what I mean is increasing your effectiveness and your efficiency in all aspects of your life, okay? And we'll be focusing not only on the current research. I'm a very active researcher that I've collected on this, but I also am going to show you how I learned what we needed and didn't understand by watching you and your own strategies and behaviors, and where there was confusion in organizations, okay, and how I could refine that. So it's based on both that research and also that practice. It's a combination of the two. So what is the gain-gain approach? Well, as succinctly as I can say it without completely confusing you, because let me tell you, it takes me a good 2 hours to get you to really understand the distinction between this approach and a win-win approach or a win approach or any of the other approaches you may be currently using, have read about, say in the course of your negotiations, well, I want a win-win agreement. This approach is really quite distinct from those, and I'm going to try to explain. So as you see on your slide, it says the gain-gain approach is distinctive from the well-known win-win approach to negotiation in that it distinguishes negotiator objectives from strategies needed to fulfill those objectives. I'm going to talk in a minute about why that's so important and why it's so rare in the minds of the negotiators I work with, even CEOs, even board members, okay? I developed this approach after finding that all of my customers and students confuse their strategies with their objectives, leading to lower valued outcomes and confusion regarding what really contributes to negotiator satisfaction and relationship commitment. And if we really stop and think about it, the 3 things you really need to walk away with from this program, and if I can do this for you, it's a success, and if I can't, it's a failure, and that is understanding what really determines who gets how much in a deal. What really determines that? What really affects that? And how can you strategically inform it? Secondly, having done that, what determines the extent to which they're satisfied with their outcome and the extent to which you're satisfied with your own outcome? Okay, and the third is what determines your interest in continuing the relationship, if it's personal, or a professional relationship if it's not, and theirs. If we can nail those 3 things, we will change your life. And let me tell you, what I've discovered from my customers, regardless of whether they were a master negotiator or a novice negotiator, is no one gets it right. I'm going to give you a couple examples. When you come to this program, I'm going to ask you about a day into it. what you think the objective of negotiation is. And you can think of it as a target. All the strategies you use should be shooting towards and hitting that target. But what we're going to discover is you don't really know your objective in negotiation. You do in your heart of hearts, as I'm going to get you to see, you really in your heart of hearts know what it is. And you really get that. But guess what? Cognitively, you don't get it. And because cognitively you don't get it, the following things will occur. We will see the vastly different perspectives of what the objective is in negotiation. Vastly. And because the objective should drive the strategy, what we're going to see is you depend on very different strategies to fulfill very different objectives. Now think about that as a team of negotiators in your company. If we see this diversity in the classroom, do you think we're going to see it in your team, your negotiation team? Yes, we do. You guys just don't discuss it, so you don't realize you have vastly different objectives, which are leading to vastly different strategies. And therefore, one arrow you may shoot, the other guy may shoot it right out of the way, okay? Because you're going different places. So it's incredibly important for team negotiators, but also an organization as a whole to share the same objective in the negotiation so that you are consistently using the same strategies, which, by the way, sends signals to the marketplace about who you are, what you'll do, why you'll do it, when you'll do it. One of the things I do when I study an organization that I'm helping another company negotiate with is I scour everything I can find out about them. You can't believe how informative web pages are and how much I can get you to have to, guess what, follow through on what you say in your web page. You can't believe how much I can find out about past deals. And what I find, I'm going to then, of course, believe you will do. Now, if different people in your organization have different objectives, therefore they're using different strategies, guess what? They're undoing the things you're trying to do, and you're doing the same for them, sending very mixed messages to the marketplace that astute negotiators will use. So we need to get you on the same page about what the objective is in negotiation. And I have a belief system that there is only one true objective in negotiation, regardless of what you're negotiating with your boss, your subordinate, your customer, your procurement organization, your neighbor, your significant other, your child. If you truly get negotiation, the objective should never change, but what should change are the strategies to fulfill that negotiation. I'm going to give you another quick example. Some of you, unfortunately, and particularly today, are furloughed or have been downsided. I don't like the word right-sided because there's nothing right about this situation. But many of you are struggling or have friends or significant others that are struggling. So let's stop and think about why organizations downsize, okay? What happens once an organization decides they're going to downsize, they put people on the team to go through the process of downsizing. What do you think their objective becomes? To downsize. Let me give you an example. Years ago, I worked for a very, very, very large international oil and gas company. Just like now, there's a dip in oil and gas. There was back then, some years ago. It's a very cyclical market. They hired me to come in and teach all of the people they were exiting how to negotiate for their next job, thinking that would increase their ability to get jobs, etc. Really very generous strategy. But let me tell you what happened. What happened is because the objective was downsizing, they downsized once. And I made a lot of money on training those people. Then they downsized again. I made even more money on training those people. Then they downsized again, more money. And then guess what happened? They hired back a bunch of those people, either as consultants or ultimately hired them back. What did those people now know how to do effectively? Negotiate their salary and compensation. Not only did they spend a fortune through the process of helping them with resume writing and this process and all kinds of other things, when we sat down and looked at it, the cost of downsizing was greater than the benefit and the cost reduction. And that's because they didn't understand the true objective. The objective became downsizing, but why do we downsize? It's not To downsize, downsizing is a strategy. People tell me it's to cut costs. I would argue that's also not the objective. There are many, many ways to cut costs, not just downsizing, but you pick the strategy of downsizing. But cutting costs is only one mechanism for doing what you ultimately are after, or the organization is ultimately trying to manage. There's all kinds of ways to cut costs, but there's also ways to increase market share, increase revenues. The goal ultimately is profitability. If you forget that, you end up thinking strategies are the objectives, and therefore you use very poor strategies to fulfill that original objective, which is increasing profitability. And trust me when I say this oil and gas did not increase their profitability through this process because they didn't understand the objective. Okay, I think that's enough of that. Let's move on to the next statement. All right, secondly, what's the program going to do? It's going to help participants to distinguish their strategies from their objectives. I just gave you a really good example. We are going to spend significant time, and until you're there, you're not going to understand the level at which you have very nebulous, unclear, poorly defined objectives for a negotiation. The objectives drive everything else. The objectives drive which strategies you pick. The objectives drive the consistency of those strategies. The objectives drive the ability to change your strategy when you find out it's not fulfilling your objective. That's why it's so important for us to distinguish the two and refine our understanding of the objective, and then create a repertoire of strategies that are proactive, that are active, and that are reactive, which I'll talk about more in a minute, so that they're flexible and you can change them when, guess what, the ones you're using are not fulfilling the objective. The objective should never change, the strategy should. Okay, so as I say here, we're going to focus on 3 secrets of master negotiators. Certainly there's all kinds of things that master negotiators do, but in my experience, it really comes down to 3 clear secrets or keys to effective negotiation. Simply put, they include have a firm objective, which I've just been getting into your head. So they understand clarity what their objective is. They understand and try to make sure others who represent the organization share the same objective. And the objective doesn't change. It doesn't change whether they're with their 2-year-old, whether their 90-year-old grandmother, whether they're dealing with their neighbor, whether they're negotiating with a competitor. I know that sounds counterintuitive to you right now. I totally understand. I've done this enough to know that. But we'll walk through it and you will come to understand it. I've never had a company or a customer or a student I've worked with who didn't at the end really get it and more effectively apply it to their lives. Okay, so the first thing is we need to know the objective. The second thing we need to do is we have to have a clear plan, because if you have an objective in negotiation, the plan is to move the other party towards that objective, right? And, you know, as my children taught me when they were young, and my 80-pound golden retriever I had taught me, it's a lot easier to get them to go there if they want to go there. So how is it you're going to embed in your strategies not only clarity and non-movement on what your objective is, but clarity about how to make it their objective, how to make them better off for doing what you want than they would be if they don't. So there's a lot about perspective taking and understanding how what you say, when you say it, how you say it is perceived by the other party, and articulating it in a way that is perceived in the way you intended. And the second part of that is the ability to truly hear, not just listen. The difference is when you hear, you come to truly understand what is at the core of what the person is trying to say without miscommunication, which we know in our personal lives is nearly impossible, but we can get better at it. And one of the things you will learn to do is hear when answers are not answers. When the person is answering you, but they haven't answered your questions, they haven't directly answered it, they haven't completely answered it, they haven't clearly answered it. So there's a lot to be able to understand and hear omission and commission, okay? Not just what people are saying, but what are they failing to say and what they have not answered, and how have, by doing so and what they said instead, formed a picture in your head in a way that's strategically very beneficial to them. The last is have a flexible strategy. So we want a clear, formulated, measurable objective, but then we want a very flexible, big repertoire of strategies so that when a set of strategies we're using, no matter how well or hard we worked on them, isn't working, we recognize it. I find negotiators beating their heads against the wall all the time because they go in with a pre-planned strategy. And when it doesn't work, what do? They change, they just keep using the same strategy over and over and beating their head against the wall. Well, once you beat it once, trust me, it's not going through to the other party. And so it's time to remember the objective, but change the strategy to fulfill that objective. So we'll be doing that both through having you do role-play negotiations, analyzing what you did in those role-play negotiations, sharing with each other how you were perceived and how you perceived the other during those role-play negotiations, and looking for what I call pivotal moments. Pivotal moments are the moments in negotiation that really, truly matter, that are going to have an impact in what you should do next, what the other party should do next, and where you end up in the negotiation. So we'll be talking about those. And in terms of these strategies, we're going to talk about proactive strategies, strategies you pick before the negotiation based on what you know, that if you think of the playing field in negotiation, right? You know, people can use offense or defense. They can run one way on the field or run another way in the field. You build the field. Between you and them, you are building the perceptual playing field. Whether it reflects the reality of the playing field or not, you're building a perceptual playing field with what you say and do and what you ask. I like to use proactive strategies, pre-negotiation proactive strategies that change the probability that they will ever end up on this side of the field, right here, or down here, or over here, because you've used certain strategies that change their mindset and change what they think, how they think they can get to fulfilling their own objectives by very early strategies. You're going to see that. We're going to do a tag team negotiation, which I'll be talking about in a minute. You'll see how you're going to learn to do that. The second is active strategies. Those are the ones you pre-planned. Those are the ones you're intending to use. But you have to be clear enough, listen enough to understand when they're working and when they're not, and therefore have reactive strategies, the ability to shift direction and change your strategies and come back to the playing field with ones that can indeed meet your objectives. So we're going to look at the 3 keys of master negotiation. Next, what are some of the primary topics covered during the seminar? Well, this doesn't capture all of it, but it will give you a sense. And it includes, first and foremost, bidding, counterbidding, and concession strategies. Let me tell you why that's so important. We now know that no matter what else you do during a negotiation, the way you bid, when you bid, who bids first, how you counterbid, and how you make concessions accounts for about 95% of the variance in outcome in negotiation. So truly understanding the most effective strategies for bidding, counterbidding, and concession strategies, both in terms of how you are building the field by doing that, which is most effective, bidding first or counterbidding. And let me tell you, you're going to have huge disagreement in the classroom. How extreme we should make those bids. We're going to have huge disagreement in the classroom, just as I do in every company. Whether we should state our value propositions first or our numerical bid. We're going to have huge variance in your belief systems and therefore the actions you take in your organizations in the classroom. I now have extremely good knowledge about the strategies that are most effective and how to use those strategies that will change your bottom line immediately. I believe so strongly in that I would predict within a day, a week, or at most a month, you will earn back every dollar you spent in this seminar by using just this set of strategies. I stake my reputation on it. When I'm doing my own consulting, I tell my customers, unless you get 100-fold at least return on investment on what I taught you, do not pay me. Not one customer has not paid me. I'm happy about that, admittedly. All right, secondly is planning and preparation. We're gonna really look at efficient mechanisms for planning your strategy and preparing for the negotiation. And more than importantly than that, I'm gonna teach you how to use something I call a map, my actual preferences, to not only be clear about the value of the various things you are negotiating relative to one another. So you'll know how to trade off, that's beneficial, how you'll know how to try to use what we call distributive strategies, claiming strategies, when that's more effective. You will be able to begin to really understand what you want and the forms it takes, as well as by what the other party says, what they seem to want and the forms they take. But even more importantly than that, it will help you track their bidding and counter-bidding strategy. And you can say that what they say they care about, you actually care about or not. Because trust me, people don't move more on strategies they care more about than the strategies, the issues they care more about versus the issues they care less about. So it's really important to visually create a mechanism for tracking their movement as well as your own. It will really inform you and help you to think about how to make the next bid. What is it they really want, regardless of whether they're super open about that, and some people are, or not open at all, and some people are. Okay, next is strategies for creating and claiming value. They are very different. Claiming value is using strategies that help you gain value from the negotiation. Creating strategies is intended to do that by increasing, if we think of all the value in the deal between you and the other party or the 10 other parties, we can think of it in terms of a pie of value. Creating strategies are really intended to help you claim strategies by expanding the pie, and having done so, make it so that, guess what? Your piece, even if you get the same distribution, is worth more. It also makes it so that the other parties, even if they get the same piece, is worth more. And because of that, it can sometimes help you claim a bigger portion of the. Not only that, creating strategies, when done well, create a sense of trust and liking and openness. And so it's very important to understand those as a subset of strategies. But it's equally important to understand how you have changed in your own head how to do creating strategies, what you need to do in creating strategies, why you need to do them in creating strategies, how you recognize the ability to do creating strategies, and what the objective is of creating strategies. I find so many of my customers today use creating strategies for creating sake. So for example, one of the things I found is when you are negotiating multiple issues, let's say somebody who's in the sales organization, sales part, what they do is the less they know about an issue, the less they know the cost to the organization of bringing that issue to the table or offering it, the more likely they are to negotiate that issue. Now, you can think about the consequence for the organization. That is not an effective creating strategy. So I'm going to teach you not to use creating for creating sake, but creating for value claiming sake, and understanding there are different strategies, but the objective is the same. It's a lot to get your head around. You may not believe it today, but I'll stake my reputation on the fact that you will get it by the end and you will use it in your life. Okay. The reality versus myth concerning who gets how much, satisfaction with that outcome, and interest in the business relationship. And I'm going to tell you, this is really confused in our heads. okay? And because it's confused in your heads, you're going to use all kinds of strategies to try to make the other side feel like they got more. And you're going to do a lot of giving them more. And you're going to assume that by giving them more, you increased their satisfaction with that outcome, their interest in the business relationship, and their liking of you. And I'm going to show you that is simply a myth. It's not true. What I'm going to show you is that in negotiation, which is a highly ambiguous situation, people have very little understanding of how much they're getting. And therefore, the way they figure that out is comparing it to something. And it can be lots of something. It can be the deal they got last year. It can be the deal they heard you gave someone else. It can be their bottom line. The point is they interpret how well they did, not in terms of the actual value, but in terms of the relative comparison of value to something in the context of negotiation. So you can give people everything and they can be completely dissatisfied. You don't understand what they're comparing it to and you haven't managed it. Or you can give them nothing and they can be ecstatic for the same reason. I'm going to teach you the reality versus the myth of what really determines how value is distributed and how to manage the perception of that value. Because as I said, you can give people everything and they will not be happy because they're not perceiving it as valuable. I'm going to teach you how to be clear about the only measure you should be using for your own satisfaction. And it's not what you're using. And how to, like I said, alter the perceptions of the other side. You can't, I could spend all day giving them value. That's not going to make sure that they're satisfied with that value. So I have to add another component, which we'll talk about, to change the perception of that value, which will indeed increase their interest in the business relationship. So we're going to look at the reality versus the myth of the relationships among those features. All right, in addition, we're going to look at how to understand power in negotiation, use it when you have it, and gain it when you don't. This is probably the issue I find companies don't understand the most. And because they don't understand it, and they don't understand that they fully need to know what is true, not just perceived power in negotiation, how to really understand and recognize what the other side has in terms of power and what you have in terms of power, and therefore what relative power really exists. What they don't do then is use strategy to change the power balance when it's imbalanced in a way that is counterproductive for them, nor do they effectively use the strategies they really have based on their actual power. I've done very significant work in the last couple of years that show that power on the whole, because people don't see the reality of it, is perceptual versus real. Now, I'm going to teach you to see it real, but I'm also going to teach you to understand how people perceive power and where those perceptions come from. I'm going to teach you about something called phantom badness. That is, badness that somebody, alternatives that somebody doesn't yet have in hand, but is informing the way they're evaluating the deal with you. I'm going to teach you about something we call ghost badness or alternatives. And those are alternatives that have gone away, but are still being used as an anchor in the head of the other party. And how you recognize that and how you slay that ghost so that they can see the reality of the offer you're making. So we're going to look at real versus perceived sources of power. We're going to look at you getting real sources of power, but you also understanding the benefits of two things when it comes to the illusion of powers, meaning phantom and ghost badness. One is recognizing when the other side has it and how to slay it. And the other is recognizing how to fax the other party and how to integrate discussions about those things in an honest way. Not lying and saying you have an alternative when you don't, but sharing that it's a phantom or sharing that it's a ghost. Those things still change the reaction of the other party and give you more power in the deal, even though it's irrational. So I'll teach you how to do that. We're going to do one of my favorite parts of the program, and it will certainly be yours. We're going to do a tag team negotiation towards the end of the program. What that means is I'm going to break you into 2 groups. Each group will work together for significant time planning their strategy for the negotiation. Then you also think about who you want to represent you and in what order. So everybody's on the same page. We'll start by having 2 or 3 people representing each side in front of the classroom negotiating. And our goal is to recognize the pivotal moments, those important moments I talked about, and stopping the midstream and analyzing what they said. Analyzing what they said and why it was particularly effective, or how we could refine it a little bit to make it more effective, and helping them to understand how it's been perceived by the other side and altered the direction they're going to go in, and or what they didn't follow up on that they needed to do to make that strategy particularly effective. We'll do that throughout. You'll help me do that. You call attention to moments that you have questions about or you have an insight about, and I will do the same. You will continuously, or as often as you want, go back into your team groups and caucus, meaning re-strategize based on what's occurred in the negotiation. And I'll participate in those too. And then come back and start again. It is the, I learned years ago when I was working for some very large companies, and then the CEOs would come and say to me, "Oh my God, Robin, you taught us so much, but we don't know how to do it. We see how you do it, but we can't figure out how to implement it ourselves." Well, guess what? The devil's in the detail when it comes to negotiation. And even if you can think about it really effectively, if you can't do it, we're not doing you any good. So I make sure throughout the program, you have multiple times to negotiate, multiple times to post your results, multiple times for us to analyze what you did and help you understand why you ended up where you did, whether it was good or it was less satisfactory to you. And then this tag team negotiation will really show you the nuances of negotiation, how important timing is, how important understanding the role you are playing and the side you're on informs belief systems about what you are allowed to do, should do, and can effectively do. You're going to learn a lot about hearing and using what the other side says. My favorite thing in the world is to use their own language and therefore say, "You said such and such, 10 minutes ago, but 2 hours ago you said such and such. Help me understand the difference." Looking for consistencies and inconsistencies, and also stating my arguments and my plans and how what I'm offering to do fulfills what they just said they were after. So I listen really hard and take notes on what they say throughout the course of the negotiation, because using their words is far more powerful than creating my own. You will see how important the timing is of what you do. Something you do early may be beneficial, more beneficial later. Something you do later may have cost you all the benefits if you'd done it earlier. So you're going to learn a lot about those nuances. And it's really, really fun. People learn so much from it. And it really gets us to know one another, and it really gets you to watch one another. And then we will periodically trade out those who are negotiating in the front. That's why it's called the tag team. Okay? When you caucus, you can already have a pre-planned idea about how you want to rotate people. But when you caucus, you may change that rotation based on what's happened. It's a wonderful part of the program. Now, we will try throughout the program to talk about how what we just said applies directly to your own circumstance. One of the things I love about this program is people are always saying, "Okay, well, this happened, help me understand it." Or, "What do you think about doing this?" Or, "We're in the midst today. I'm sorry I was gone for 15 minutes, but we're in the midst of doing a negotiation. God, I wish I'd had this 2 months ago, but at least I learned this yesterday, so this is what we did. What do you think?" And also during lunch. It is very, very typical, although I'm not sure how we're going to do it on Zoom. Whatever, we might be able to figure it out. So I always have people who sit with me and ask me about very specific deals they're working on and coming up with ways of refining those deals and learning from them. This whole program is certainly about learning about state-of-the-art knowledge in negotiation. It's about learning what I've had the great, privileged opportunity of learning from all of you and all of the yous that I worked with in the past and people in companies all over the world. What a privilege to get to study and learn from people with such varied approaches and many, many, many master negotiators. What I love is the ability to take that, and instead of you having to have only your own experiences, learning all the stuff I have in my head, but also learning all the stuff everyone else in the room has in their head. Because if we could capture and bottle the amount of experience and knowledge by all of you, you understand what we would have. And this program gives you the opportunity to share that with one another, to hear one another, to disagree with one another, and have us work it through with all of these people, with all of these experts, with all of these people with such different industries, such different levels in the organization, such different mindsets, different experiences with culture. It gives us the opportunity to share and learn from one another. And there's one thing I can absolutely promise you. There's not a program I've ever done where I didn't learn from you. So this is not a unidirectional learning process. I promise you, I will watch you, I will listen to you, I will hear you, and I will learn from you. And having done so, the people I work with in the future will benefit. So let me thank you for your participation. And not only your willingness to learn, but your willingness to teach. That, I think, makes this a particularly effective program, but it also makes it so I don't get bored and tired of it, which I so appreciate. Okay, we're going to open it up to Q&A. Oops, I'm going to go back. I don't see any questions in the Q&A section. If you have any questions, one of the things you might think about is this. People come to these programs for very different reasons. They have different objectives for themselves about what they want to get out of it. I'd be interested to hear what you're trying to get out of this program. And let me talk a little bit about it and address whether or not you can get that, honestly, or not. And or refine, give you a more refined answer about you and how it relates to this program. So if you have questions from anything I've said whatsoever, or you want to share what you're trying to get out of this program, please feel free to put it in Q&A. We're gonna give you a couple of minutes to do that, and then after that, if I see those questions, and I'm starting to see them, thank you very much. I feel like I'm on TV, you know, doing the call-in stuff. I'm going to try to answer some of these, and then in a few minutes, I'm going to have to turn it back to Sherry. Is the program online or classroom? We were just discussing that earlier, okay? Let me tell you my preference is for it to be online, and let me explain why. When we have people in the classroom, and then we also have people online, the problem is they can hear me, those online, but they can't hear the people in the classroom. And this interchange and interaction between everybody is a crucial part of this program. And what it will do is break you into two groups. Those in the classroom will hear each other and might be able to hear you on Zoom. And those on Zoom, though, won't hear the people in the classroom because they won't have mics on. I'll be the only one with the mic on. So to me, you lose, particularly if you're online, if we do both, you're going to lose some of the value. In addition, we know people negotiate differently on Zoom than they do in person. And I'm going to be evaluating what you do in comparison to what I know people typically do and what others in the room do. Well, if you're in two different formats, that's really difficult to do. In addition, I'm going to assign you to meeting rooms and people with whom to negotiate. If some of you are doing that in the classroom and some are doing that on Zoom, it greatly complicates our ability to do that. And third, I think when people are online and not in the classroom and no others in the classroom, they feel out, you know, they feel disenfranchised. They feel separated from. They don't feel as if they're getting the full experience. I have now done program after program and classes on Zoom. I know how to make it just as interactive, just as involving, and you guys will have the chance to see each other and talk to each other. So guess what? You'll get the full experience of the full class, just like we would in, the classroom. So I'm trying to talk them into, and we'll see whether we're going to do this, making this a fully online program, because I can better serve all of you, integrate all of you, hope you get to know one another, and manage the process better if we handle it that way. So we'll see, but that's my preference. Okay. Refresher update in terms of negotiation skills. Took your course in the 90s during my MBA program. Oh my God, Chris Brown, so nice to hear from you. Now, let me tell you something, dude. I can't believe it. I'm so pleased you're thinking of coming now, because what I'm doing now has nothing to do with what I taught you in the 90s. The beauty of all my opportunities to work with so many companies worldwide, and the beauty of all the research I've done, is I am going to tell you some of the things I told you in the 90s. Well, it was wrong. Sorry about that. It was wrong. It was what I knew then, but now I know better, and I know much more effectively and much more clearly things that I never could have taught you in the 90s. And I look different, as I'm sure you notice. The beauty of aging is the beauty of the brain. Let me tell you, at least to a certain point. And so if you come, there are so many topics. I never talked to you about detailed bidding strategies. I didn't know about them. I didn't do work on them. I didn't talk to you in detail about power and what we know. And I sure didn't talk about power illusions and phantom fatness and ghost fatness. Oh, I got to stop in a second. So if you come, I promise you, you will get, 30 years of additional knowledge, not quite 30, but you know what I'm talking about, of additional knowledge that will very much refine what you did. And I would love to see you again. All right, so I sure hope you come. Thank you for that question. Okay, can I do one more, Sherry?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, as a furloughed medical device contract associate, I feel you. I am interested in continuing development of my skill set. Is there a certificate gained for this seminar? Always like to share that on growing skills. I think that's something we can provide and do provide. We give you a diploma, which is like a certificate. So you will have that, and you can frame it as fancily as you like. And if you want to blow it up somewhere, you can do that too, okay? This is definitely a skill set. Whenever I work for law firms or medical firms or whoever else that needs continued education, we always create something that shows that it does indeed fulfill those objectives. So you will get the diploma, and also if you have certain things you need, you might be able to talk to Sherry, and she might be able to get that passed, because, this is definitely a skill set that applies to everything you do, every organization you're in, etc. When's my next book? I'm just going to answer this last one. Sorry. When's my next book going to be published? Yeah, I don't necessarily suggest you should buy my old book, because I like to have it be state of the art, and it's no longer, believe it or not, it's been out there for, I can't remember how long, but like 20 years, and I'm still making money on it, which I think is a shame, because I don't think I deserve it. Because I would say very different things today. I wouldn't change the things I said, but I could add so much more to what I said then. I'm working on 2 books currently. One is called The Gain Approach to Profitable Negotiation, and Why Win-Win Should Be Put Back in the Closet. That's our working title. And the second book I'm working on is called The Benefits of Bossy, How to assertively live. Let's see, what's the last part? The Benefits of Bossy. More effective strategies for living every aspect of your personal and professional life. It has to do with all I know on gender differences, all the research I'm doing that is completely counterintuitive, that is showing everything you're being told about gender differences, everything you're being told about backlash is reducing your assertiveness and reducing your effectiveness rather than increasing it. And I happen to be writing it, I'm very pleased to say, with the CEO of DE Magazine, who's already written numerous books herself and is very tied into the publishing world, Christine Allison, who's a good friend. So hopefully that'll be a really interesting book, and I'm working on both of those. But I will tell you about parts of it in this program. Okay? All right, I'm so sorry I can't address the additional issues, although we may be able to stay on if you're interested. I'm going to turn it back to Sherry so that she can continue with what she has to say. Thank you Thank you for joining us. I hope I'm going to see you very soon.
Thank you, Robin. That was wonderful. I just wanted to mention the classes October 6th through 8th. There was a question quickly about how large are the size of the tag teams. So I don't know, Robin, if you're still muted or not,
Okay.
but maybe, yep.
I'm not.
Okay.
We're going to do negotiations that go from very simple to very complex. So you will do many one-on-one negotiations. You will do some small team on small team negotiations, okay? And the tag team negotiations, we break the class in half. And one of the tasks for you is to manage your friggin' team. Meaning, figuring out how you are going to take all these people with all these different opinions and in a coordinated way, create a discussion where you hear people and their input and come up with a refined, consistent set of strategies, okay, for that tag team. That's often why you also then have to go back into caucuses, but you now learn something you didn't know and you need to change your strategy. You will be amazed how much you learn from the in-team strategy session as well as the tag team strategy or tag team session. People learn a huge amount about it. I come in and take notes and watch it. And there are times when you let people run it who shouldn't be. And there are times when you manage it. And there are times when you split off into all these little separate groups. That is a terrible strategy because then people aren't sharing the same things at the same time. So part of it is learning how to do that, which is kind of like learning how to coordinate your organization so they're using the same objective and the same strategy.
Thank you. Thank you. So very quickly, I'm just going to talk about the kind of programs that we offer. I think I mentioned at the beginning, but in date order, this is where we're rolling out these programs starting in the fall. On September 8th, we have Transformational Leadership. September 14th is Rising Latino Leaders. In October, we're launching the Leading Organizational Change, the Women in Leadership Program, the Master Negotiation Program of Robin's, and the Essentials of Finance and Accounting. And then in November, we are launching the Mergers and Acquisitions Program, and then I mentioned the Building the Intelligent Enterprise Program as well. Year-round, though, we, as Robin mentioned, we work specifically with companies to help them develop leadership competencies, and we can touch on all of these topics and deliver a program specifically built for companies. Many times these are negotiation programs, sometimes they're financial acumen programs, but we can basically pick and choose topics that are relevant to the organization, and we do that year-round. And then I wanted to mention, here is Robin's contact information and my contact information. Please send us additional questions if you have things that we didn't cover today. I do see one here quickly. The cost of the program is $3,995. It's worth every penny, as Robin said. And we are offering a $200 early enrollment discount. And we have other discounts available on our website for military, for nonprofits. So be sure to check the website for those that might apply to you. So I know we are at time, and I thank you all for joining us today. We will take your questions after the program. We'll be able to download this, and anything that we didn't cover today, we will be able to send back out. You also all will get a copy of today's presentation and a copy of the slides. And I hope it was a good overview of what you can gain from the program. I think I've sat through this a couple of times and I learned something new every single time. Can you believe she has? I have actually.
I'm happy to hear that. That's good. That's because this is a changing field, and I would be remiss and could not live with myself and would be bored if I didn't constantly update it and change it as I learn new things. So every year people are learning things that I didn't choose the year before, which is wonderful, I think.
Right.
So let me add one thing really quickly, and then I know we need to let you go. Zoom, we can handle more students than we could without Zoom, but we still have to keep it manageable because we want to make sure everybody gets to participate, get to know everybody, and I can see people on the screen. So this is the first webinar we're going to do. We're going to do a second one. If you're really interested, I would suggest you sign up immediately, because there are times when the class gets too big, even when it's in class, and we have to move people to the next session, which would be in the spring. So if you're really interested, you really think you're going to get value from it, and you're ready to do it. And I know many of you have cost constraints right now because of all the things we're talking about, and totally understand that. If you can't come now, don't forget about us. You can certainly sign up later, but if you really do want to sign up, I would encourage you to do it as quickly as possible. Okay?
All right. Thank you all very much for participating today. We hope to see you in the program October 6th through 8th. And the next session that we're going to do for a webinar is going to be September 17th, I believe. So look for those invitations to come out. And we hope you've enjoyed today's session, learned something that you can then apply, and more importantly, get more details about our upcoming class. So thank you again. Thank you, Robin. And
My pleasure.
yes, thanks again. Take care, everyone.
I'm just picturing what you look like because I have no idea.